Ron Darling and Mickey Mantle. Getty Images. New York baseball fans will forever debate if the 1986 Mets, with their MLB-dominating 108 wins, were as good as the fabled 1950s Yankees teams that won 6 World Series. One argument has been settled: those bombers could drink the Amazins under the table, even as old men. Ron Darling, a hero of that famously hard-partying Mets squad, recalls in his new book the night he came face-to-face, and cocktail-to-cocktail, with 3 Yankees legends. It was early in Darling's career, when the Yale grad would routinely stop by Pino's on 34th Street after a game for a meal and a nightcap. One night, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford and Billy Martin, having a big old time, recognized Darling and kicked out a chair for me, writes the current Mets TV analyst. I just sat and listened as these old pals traded stories, he recalls. The owner made sure the 7 and 7s kept coming. That's what they were all drinking. And drinking. Darling quaffed beer to try to keep up with the boozing bombers, but the raucous marathon continued for hours. Finally, the old-timers stood relief, and stuck him with a $300 bill. He stared at the tab for 36 7 and 7s in disbelief, knowing he wouldn't be able to pay his rent that month. Drinking is a common thread in many of Darling's yarns, including during the 1986 playoffs versus the Astros, when the Mets players filed into the clubhouse in Houston to find the team's venerable radio announcer Bob Murphy unconscious on the trainer's table. Now, we'd all seen Murph drunk before, we'd all seen each other drunk, so the sight of Bob Murphy splayed out on the trainer's table didn't even rate a double take. Darling writes. Ron Darling in 2016, Getty Images. We just went about our business, like he wasn't even there. We even gathered around the trainer's table for a team meeting. Sadly, weirdly, hilariously, the meeting went on as if Bob Murphy was the centerpiece at a fine buffet table. Darling was a man of taste, and one of only a handful of Mets who lived in Manhattan, immersed in its culture and nightlife. His one Gotham regret: never getting a regular seat at the big table at Elaine's. I rarely had the gravitas to be seated front and center, but owner Elaine Kaufman always greeted me warmly, generously. In those days, a hug from Elaine was a sign that you had arrived, although as we passed that big table in front with all the luminaries, and then all those lesser and lesser tables as you moved toward the back, with those lesser and lesser luminaries, I was reminded of just how far I had to go. Once she sat me down at the big table next to the actor Chris Noth, well before he had his first real star turns in law. The handsome hurler saw this as a promising sign that he was finally rising in the pecking order. And yet, a few nights later, a busier one, Elaine deposited him at a third-tier table next to Noth, who'd also been downgraded.